Hello, this is Martin. Welcome to my video. Today I'm going to discuss 11 reasons why governments will never ban Bitcoin. I think this is a big fear of a lot of new Bitcoiners, but also old Bitcoiners, that governments are going to ban Bitcoin. And today I want to discuss 11 reasons why I don't think that is going to be the case. Of course, this is not a guarantee. They might still end up banning it, but I think it's very unlikely. So before we go into that, why would they actually ban it? The first and obvious one is they have fear of losing control over their own currency. So being able to control your own currency is a very powerful thing. You can decrease the value of it to make your exports more cheaper for other countries, which of course is going to increase your exports. You can use it to service debt and many other things. Governments will fear that they lose control over that. The second one is criminal activity. Governments don't want, illegal money laundering. They don't want funding of terrorism and many other illegal purposes that you can do with money. Third, they also want to be able to confiscate your money in case you committed a big crime. And with Bitcoin, that's not possible. If you put your Bitcoin on a hardware wallet and you store the keys in your head, there's no way for the government to get the keys out of your head. Fourthly, they also want to be able to control whether a transaction is settled or not. So right now, the United States, the majority of transactions actually go through New York. The United States can just choose to cancel them. Of course, in practice, this might not happen often, but they can still choose to do it. They have the power to do it. And finally, countries will also be afraid of a collapse of their own currency. You've seen that in many countries, in Germany, in the 30s, or the 20s, of the last century. In Argentina and many countries, you see currency collapses. And countries are really terrified of that because it leads to a lot of instability. It leads to economic despair, among many other things. These are 5 reasons why the government would want to ban Bitcoin. And the 11 reasons I'm going to share why they won't are, of course, going to touch those 5 points. The first one, and I believe the most powerful one, Bitcoin is fully transparent. All transactions are recorded from the start of Bitcoin on. So even if you did an illegal transaction, let's say 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it will always be visible. And there's actually one company called Chain Analysis, based in New York. I actually met the CEO on an airplane. That was pretty cool. But they're actually helping governments to find criminals and find illegal activity on the blockchain. And they're very successful. They're still busting criminals from the early days. And if those criminals would have used cash, they would have probably never been traced based upon the money they used. Because cash is done. Cash is just a piece of paper, and it's the same for gold. So for criminals, it's much more in their interest to use an offline form of currency. Of course, there might be blockchains like Monero or other ones that are fully private, that have solutions for this. But Bitcoin is not trying to be that. Bitcoin actually really values its transparency. So the only thing governments need is they need to know a wallet address, which is of course publicly available, and they need to know the person who owns the address. And that's what you see right now. They're enforcing a lot of KYC to know the owners of all the wallets, so they can actually trace, all the transactions over the network. I think we're going to see much more of that, and governments are going to build up a sophisticated system to, control wallets and their owners. Then the next one, also powerful, game theory. If one country bans it and the other one adopts it, the other one wins. And you can see this, for example, with Switzerland. Switzerland heavily embraces it. And Switzerland is sovereign, they're not part of any European Union or stuff like that. Switzerland makes their own decisions. And even in the case when a lot of countries would come together, banning is unlikely, because imagine if 80% of the countries come together. The value for the other 20% is going to go up exponentially, because they can attract a lot of capital, a lot of innovation, etc. So this is why I think it's very unlikely. Banning Bitcoin is going to bring less benefits than not banning it, even though they might still bring some negatives for governments. Third one, blockchain is innovation. It's like banning the internet in the 90s. It's stupid. Like, you want to embrace innovation. You want to welcome entrepreneurs. If you would have banned the internet in the 90s, not a problem. All the internet entrepreneurs, they would just leave the country. And they would just build their company somewhere else. And that would, of course, lead to an economic drama. And a big way you can see this is by looking at the United States. The United States has benefited tremendously from all the internet companies. If you look to the performance of the stock market over the last 10 years, it has outperformed every single other stock market by a long shot. The reason for that, all the internet companies, the FANG stocks, but of course also a lot of other companies. They're drastically outperforming. And right now, is the upcoming decade and 2 decades is going to be the decade for blockchain companies. And every single country is going to want the global leaders in this space, because it's going to create a lot of jobs. It's going to create a booming stock market, a booming economy, etc. Basically, there's an opportunity to create the crypto valley instead of the Silicon Valley. Banning also shows a lot of weakness. If you ban Bitcoin, you validate its use case. You can see this in a lot of countries who try to ban Bitcoin, example being Nigeria. Bitcoin adoption has gone up dramatically after governments have banned it. And that's also pretty obvious, because people are going to think, why does my government ban it? And they start diving in, and they see, wow, this actually has a lot of benefits for me, and of course, some disadvantages for my government. So they actually adopt it. Of course, there's political risk. It leads to instability, there could be riots, and you're definitely not getting re-elected. Then, of course, you also have the economic risk of banning, which is bigger. There's a big outflow of capital. Bitcoiners can easily move to a different place and build their companies there, or invest their money there, store their Bitcoins there. This is the result of a big global economy. People can just move wherever they want. You even have crypto passports. You can get a passport to move somewhere because you're a Bitcoiner. Number 7, this one is a little bit more difficult potentially to believe in, but politicians are here for our benefit. At least they should be. Politicians should be there for the people. And of course, there are certain politicians who still hold that in high regard. And a great example is this lady here, Cynthia Lamas. She is actually pushing for Bitcoin adoption. And she believes it's a tool for people to create wealth, and a tool for people to create their pension. And it's even in their own interest, because a wealthy country is a better country. It leads to more prosperity, more welfare, and they can also tax more because there's more money. Number 8, I don't even think there's a way back. Besides all the other arguments, Tesla has invested 1.5 billion, MicroStrategy invested billions, Mass Mutual has invested 100 million, and probably many more companies have invested money in Bitcoin behind the scenes. It's becoming deeply ingrained in the system. And as you can see, the adoption curve, of course, is only going to accelerate. And we also see that right now in the price of Bitcoin. New all-time highs almost on a daily basis. It's deeply ingrained in the system. And all those players who adopt Bitcoin, who love Bitcoin, they have a lot of lobbying power. So even if the government would try to ban it, those companies are going to lobby. Those institutions are going to lobby. Those individuals are going to lobby. Bitcoin is already regulated. Another very powerful reason. It's seen as a commodity. So the governments could increase taxes on it. That's definitely possible, to make it less favorable to own. But I believe if you look at Libra, that was directly killed. So a few weeks/months after it was announced, the governments decided to completely shut it down. And they didn't do that with Bitcoin. It's already 11 years old. So if the government really wanted to ban it, they probably would have already done it. Because they've done so with Libra. They acted very decisively. This, of course, is always a debate. Is it a store of value? Is it a currency? Is it both? I believe right now Bitcoin is a store of value and not a currency because it's not feasible as a currency. It's not stable and there are not enough transactions possible. The reason for that is because Bitcoin is optimized for security and decentralization. In the future, it might become a currency. But by then, it's already heavily regulated and accepted and adopted as a store of value. So then it's going to be very difficult to ban it. So I believe that Bitcoin is going to evolve. It's smart, it's codable, programmable. So I think, people are probably going to find solutions in the future to make it possible to do transactions on Bitcoin. And not only possible, but also to make it easier and smoother and a better experience for the user than alternatives. But by then, Bitcoin is already so heavily ingrained in every single system that we have to accept it. Of course, governments also don't have limitless power. FBI couldn't get data from Apple. Gold was banned, but it was not really enforced. BitTorrent is still not shut down. And decentralization is ultimately uncontrollable. Thank you for listening to those 11 reasons. If you have any questions about them, please let me know in the comments. I also have 2 bonus reasons. Code is free speech. Language is allowed, of course, that's part of the Constitution. And also in the United States specifically, freedom of ownership is a very big value. Freedom in general is a big value. So banning Bitcoin would really go against the core of what the United States is built upon. That doesn't necessarily, of course, it's the same for other countries. While the other reasons are valid also for other countries. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.